Yes, sir. Full start the talk. You? Or ladies first? Full talk first.
I don't know.
Good morning.
Morning, yes. Your name is?
My name is Patrick.
Patrick.
I came from Canada,
I see.
from Vancouver.
I see.
One question I have
Please,
for you
please.
is the notion of the self. I've been to the astrologers, the nadis.
Oh,
You give the thumbprint.
you
and-
got the Nadi reading.
Yes.
Did the Nadi reading without you telling them,
Oh, yeah.
give you your name, your father's name, mother's name?
Yes.
They did.
Yes.
I-
They
so-
gave. They were able to tell me in the translation of Tamil. They were able to tell me my name, Patrick.
Yeah. Then, whether what is said is right, turns out right or wrong,
Yeah.
you can be sure of one thing. The reading is your reading.
Yeah. It took quite a while, like maybe an hour and a half, to find the right scroll, but they were
Yeah.
able to tell.
But it's much better to have your own reading than somebody else's passed off.
Definitely. So they were able to tell me my children and my wife's name and my
Yeah.
mother and father and
Oh,
so
wonderful.
on. So
So-
what it taught me was that there was the idea of an individual story. I see myself as Patrick as a collection of stories in my current form,
Collection of events.
events. So, what is it that died last time that was born Patrick, that will die Patrick and be reborn?
No. Patrick is the ego. Ego is identified consciousness or self. The ego is not born with the body. My concept is when the body is born, until actual, I've seen it more than one time and again, a child, until the child is 2.5, does not begin to say me, I, or mine. He refers to himself by his name, as if he would refer to someone else by name. John doesn't like it. Sarah is afraid. You see? So, the ego comes into life as me and the other only around age of 12.5. Therefore, the ego is not born with the body. And another very simple thing. Many, many years ago, there must have been only a few thousand people, a few thousand egos. And now there are 6 billion egos. Where did they come from? Can 100,000 egos become 6 billion egos? See what I mean? Therefore, when a new body is born at the age of 2.5, around that, a new ego is created to go through the events which are supposed, which are predetermined to pass through that body-mind organism. That ego is only for that body-mind organism. And that's where I totally differ from this rebirth thing.
So the notion of self-realization is that the ego is lost.
No, again, if the ego is gone, who lives his life?
I'm sorry?
If the ego Patrick is gone, then Patrick becomes enlightened. Who lives the rest of his life? So far as I can see, there are only two, the body-mind organism, through which the ego functions
So the ego is always going to be present.
until the last breath. That is my concept, totally different from millions of other people. So do you know how they've answered? How they've answered this difficulty? My point is, if Patrick, as the ego is gone, who lives his life? Life after life after life after life. Oh, they say, no. There, it is the soul. So they brought in the concept of a soul, as if the ego was not sufficient. They brought in the idea of a soul. Soul goes through birth after birth, ego after ego. So if they bring something about the soul, they'll bring something else. My basic point is, if the ego disappears after enlightenment, Ramana Maharshi lived for 50 years after his sudden enlightenment. Who lived for 50 years in that ashram? The soul? What soul? Therefore, I repeat, totally against thousands of masters, I say, the ego is who lives and dies. It is the ego who gets enlightened or not enlightened. It is the ego. Yesterday someone came to me for many years. But. With a mind like that, such a mind is incapable of receiving anything from me. All I can give anyone is my concept. See what I mean? Mm-hmm. What can you get from it? Nothing but concept. My concept, which has given me an happiness, which I consider as enlightenment.
So self-realization is the process of refining the ego.
Yes, I agree. You can put it that way. And refining the ego means after enlightenment, whatever you get is only for the rest of the life of the ego. And what the ego gets after enlightenment, I call happiness, as totally different in nature from pleasure and pain.
So the Nadis told me that this would be my last incarnation. So what happens to this?
What happens is, this ego is supposed to accept my concept. Facts. The Nadi Bhavish says, this ego is going to accept my concept, and therefore this ego cannot have a rebirth. I'm not, honestly, this is the only interpretation. Because, as I told someone who came yesterday, it is not his destiny for enlightenment to happen. And what is enlightenment? You see, what I speak to you is from personal experience. I pursued enlightenment for 35, 40 years and ended up in total frustration because my two basic questions, no guru could answer satisfactorily. What is enlightenment? What precisely is enlightenment? More important, what should I expect enlightenment to give me that I didn't have before? More pertinent. Isn't that right?
So yesterday on my way in from the airport,
You were here yesterday?
I came yesterday.
I see.
I was at the stoplight looking at this new tower, Ambani's building, the 45-story
Yes.
billion-dollar home.
Yes.
And a man came up. He had two stumps for arms, and the bottom half of his jaw was missing. And he came, to beg for money. And part of me was only seeing God, like absolutely on a genuine level. But then I sat back and I thought maybe I was delusional, thinking that I was having some, out-of-body experience. What am I seeing when I see these body minds? Am I seeing Am I in a witnessing mode?
You are supposed to see precisely what you are supposed to see according to your destiny, God's will, cosmic law. And having seen it, the way you react is also predetermined. Same scene you see or hear, the reaction which is a biological reaction, that's another of my concepts. It's a biological reaction.
So do you see a man right now?
Oh, indeed. Oh, very much so.
So I was delusional
Wait,
then.
let me put it this way. I see a three-dimensional object who is now characterized as a human being. The manifestation, what is the manifestation? Totality of three-dimensional objects. The entire manifestation is the totality of three-dimensional objects. And there are four, according to my concept, there are four different types. First there is a stone, in which there is no apparent life. Then there is a growing plant, which grows by itself, nobody waters it, and may grow into a tree. Third, there is the animal, with a three-dimensional body, mind, organism, and an ego. Your pet dog will not let you pet some other dog. Patrick is my master. See what I mean?
Yes, because I have Labrador retrievers and they do exactly that.
I told you I talk from experience. So your pet dog is an ego. Your pet dog is an ego. Finally, there is a human being who is an animal. Therefore, there is an ego. But the ego that is the human being has the additional all-important sense of personal doership.
So if this is an experience in consciousness, do you have the experience sometimes where form disappears and you lose the attachment to form and it turns into something else for you?
I lose attachment to this. Who the bloody hell is going to living his life?
Do you transcend the ego at times?
Who?
Right.
Who, Patrick? Who? Therefore, when you say you mean this ego called Ramesh. And when I talk to Patrick, I'm talking to an ego called Patrick. So simple, it makes crowds laugh. I agree. This simplicity and clarity brings you right down to where what you are. Enlightenment. Tell me, Patrick, who is concerned with being enlightened or afraid that he may not be enlightened? Patrick, isn't it? Or do you want to escape into the soul? Therefore, when I was told, I'm not doing anything, the soul is doing it, then I said, let the bloody soul worry. Why should I worry about anything? About next life? Why should I, Ramesh, an ego, identified with this body, worry about another life? Whether in another life I'm going to be a human being, or a dog, or a bird? Now, I'm only concerned with this life. And what do I expect enlightenment to give me in this life? Happiness, which has nothing to do with pleasure or pain, which happens through some happening in daily living. So, after I retired from work, being thoroughly frustrated with the concept of enlightenment, I decided for the rest of my life, I shall seek the selfish happiness for myself. What happens to the rest of the world? Not mine. It's God's problem, not mine. But that doesn't mean that if a beggar comes and that there is a body-mind reaction, biological reaction. So when the biological, one beggar, no biological reaction. Another beggar, a biological reaction, which makes me give him 5 rupees or 10 rupees or 100 rupees. Therefore, the reaction is biological reaction. But whether the biological reaction happens or not is again not the ego's control. The happening of the biological reaction is predetermined, whether it happens or not happens. But either way, the happening, the ego is not concerned. It's a biological reaction. The most important result of that concept is Patrick cannot do a good thing. Patrick cannot do a bad thing. The sage did not choose to be a sage. The psychopath did not choose to be a psychopath. The murderer did not choose to be a murderer. The victim did not choose to be a victim. Therefore, my basic, everything is a happening. Therefore now, from my personal experience, I decided I shall seek my happiness. So my first big problem was, I know what pleasure is. I may not have enjoyed all the pleasures in life, but I know what pleasure is. And so, I know what pleasure is, and yet I'm seeking happiness. For 40 years I was seeking happiness. So the most important first question, what is this happiness I'm seeking? Even if I had enjoyed all the pleasures in life, I would still be seeking this happiness. Therefore, the most important first step in my personal search for experience of happiness was, what is this happiness I'm seeking? And the most important conclusion I came to was, the happiness I'm seeking has nothing to do with the pleasure in life. Therefore, another really important conclusion, the happiness I'm seeking has nothing to do with the happening of life itself. Life means a series of happenings through some body-mind organism or the other, or what is called a natural happening. And any happening gives pleasure to some, pain to others. So pleasure and pain are the basic duality of the manifestation and its functioning that we call life.
What did Ramesh mean when he said that the murderer didn't choose to murder, this person didn't choose to do that?
Wouldn't it have, if there was choice, wouldn't it have been the other way around?
Wouldn't it have been?
The other way around. The victim would have chosen to be the murderer.
Then something you said earlier is, it's already happened.
It's already happened. In other words, someday someone will quote somebody called Ramesh. Life is a movie which is already in the can.
Can you speak about that more?
Yes, and the one who is seeing the movie is a character in the bloody movie. So we are watching the movie in which I figure and all figures, but frame by frame by frame by frame.
See, the nadis were able to see thousands of years ago these lives,
Yeah.
thousands and
That
thousands
is
of
why
lives.
they-
They were able to see them all.
That is
who were
why.
meant to
Yes.
come into the
in
temple.
other words, those who wrote the Nadi had the divine gift of seeing into the future which is already there. Having said that, what I am saying is, I doubt if any Nadi reader truly had total control of what they happened. In my case, I had the Nadi reading, and the Nadi reading said he has been a seeker all his life. He will have two gurus. The first guru, when he meets 1 year after meeting the guru, 1 year after retirement, the result will be quick. Enlightenment will be quick. That's what the Nadi said. But thereafter, not a word. 30 years after enlightenment. So many talks, so many books, not a word. Therefore, the divine gift of seeing into the future was only up to the point of my enlightenment. Beyond that, that particular didn't have the gift. But the very fact that the Nadi, someone was able to write someone 2000 years later, means everything is already there. And that is what Lord Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna tells Lord Krishna, I don't want to fight because I see a rain before me. My friends, relatives, and my preceptors. Even my friends and relatives, I'm prepared to kill, but not my preceptors. That's why he puts it both, and that's where the Bhagavad Gita starts. So Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, you don't have to worry about killing your preceptors, because as time, I have already killed them. You are only going to be the instrument through which their death is going to happen. You are born a warrior, you have been trained to be a warrior. Your genes and your conditioning, therefore, is that of a warrior. Mm-hmm. And even if you decide not to fight, you will fight. Your genes and your conditioning will make you fight. Therefore, choose to fight. You are born warrior, therefore you are a warrior. But you have no choice about whom you fight and whether you will win or lose. That you cannot know.
So I would like to give you this flower.
Yeah.
Now, Patrick gave that to Ramesh. I made the choice. Was that meant to happen?
Yeah. Your choice was meant to happen. I'm not joking. Your choice was meant to happen. Therefore, you cannot do a good thing, you cannot do a bad thing, as far as you and God is concerned.
You're only meant to do what is in your nature.
Therefore, you will do what you are supposed to do and suffer the pain or pleasure the society inflicts on you. But you don't have to worry about your conscience. You don't have to worry about any punishment from God. Because it is God who is bringing about whatever action happens to any body, mind, organism. In a given situation, what is the very essence and basis of daily living, Patrick? Daily living for anyone. In a given situation, I'm forced to do what I feel I should do. If I decide, what's the use? Everything is predetermined. Why should I do anything? Agree. So it's my privilege to decide to do nothing. Therefore, either I do something or I do nothing. And that something or nothing is going to have a result and an effect of that result, which is what the society considers my doing or not doing. Rewards me or punishes me. Reward means pleasure, punishment means pain. And that is the whole essence of life. I'm bound to do whatever I something or nothing, which is bound to result in pleasure or pain as decided by the society in which I live, according to social regulations and legal provisions. And daily living means I'm forced to accept that. Isn't that daily living? Therefore, all I can do is do what I think I should do. Make a considered decision of doing something or not doing something. A considered decision. And thereafter, I sit back, watch the movie happening, and the reactions of the various body-mind organisms to what is happening through that body-mind organism, and watch it like a movie without condemning anyone for anything.
Could Ramesh quickly tell us about his self-realization with his master?
Well, actually, I had my self-realization. Now, therefore, the first thing, very first thing, Patrick, I've asked myself, why is it 40 years, so many enlightened people, I don't doubt it, but none has been able to tell me what precisely is enlightenment. So I asked myself, why is it that for 40 years no one has been able to tell me what enlightenment is? Okay? And therefore the only answer that I had and I could give you is, can you give me the answer? What do you think? Why is nobody able to tell anybody what enlightenment is? Simple reason, extraordinarily simple, because enlightenment is not a certified event. It's a doctor's certificate. It's a chartered accountant certificate. I may say, where do I get the certificate from? God? Therefore, the most important conclusion I came to is that nobody was could tell me what, because it is not a certified event. Therefore, enlightenment is a personal concept based on personal concepts. Therefore, you ask me, am I enlightened? I say, yes, I'm enlightened. I'm enlightened according to my concept. Then you ask me, oh, you think you are enlightened? Do you still have pain? I said, yes. Do you still have psychological pain, grief? I said, yes. Are you able to know what goes on anywhere in the world? I said, no. Do you have special powers to cure my 20-year-old migraine? I said, no. Then how can you be enlightened? I'm not joking. That is precisely the concept of the average person who is seeking enlightenment. Once I'm enlightened, I'll be God. I shall want nothing. If I go in a car and in a rush, I want to park the car, someone who is parked for no reason at all will go over and make room for me. No want of mine will remain unsatisfied. This is a total misconception. Why? For a simple reason. Almost every sage has suffered physical and mental pain. Therefore, sage never feel stupid. Therefore, the important comes to is, if I say that the ego continues even after enlightenment, because that ego in which enlightenment has happened as a concept still lives as a separate entity. Now, earlier it was very simple, very simple. What is an enlightened person? He has no ego. There is no separation. Nobody says, then who lives as a separate entity? Which is my point. Therefore, your question to me would be, if enlightenment does not mean separation, end of the ego, where is the difference between the ego who is enlightened and the ordinary person who is not enlightened? Valid question, isn't it? If enlightenment according to you is not separation, end of the ego, but the same ego continues to live, then what is the difference between the ego that the sage is and the ordinary person who is the ego he is? The most valid question, because the lack of which so much misunderstanding and misery and unhappiness. And my answer is extraordinarily simple. In the ego of the sage, according to the destiny, God's will, cosmic law, the sense of personal doership has been uprooted. And that's what Ramana Maharshi means when he says, the ego of the sage. I would say the ego that is the sage. Anyway, Ramana Maharshi is supposed to have said, the ego of the sage is like the remnants of a burnt rope. It's a burnt rope, you can see the form, but you can't use it to tie up anybody. The ego of the sage is like the remnants of a burnt rope. Therefore, I am a separate entity, you are a separate entity. But I know that I can do nothing and you can do nothing. You can do nothing to harm me, I can do nothing to harm you. Therefore, there is no question of me, this ego, condemning himself and carrying a load of guilt and shame for my actions. Similarly, there is no more load of hatred for others for their actions which have hurt me. And ultimately, what is the happiness which enlightenment has given me? No bliss. Whatever bliss is only totally intensified pleasure, which only some incident in life can give me. So what have I got as happiness? The Buddha has given an answer thousands of years ago, most accurate. The Buddha said, what is enlightenment? What does it do for me? And again, Buddha is the only one who maybe others I don't know, who has given straight answers to what is enlightenment. If you ask me, I am enlightened according to my concept. What is your concept? My concept simply is everything that happens is a happening according to God's will, cosmic law. How that happening affects whom, for better or worse, happiness or unhappiness, pleasure or pain, is again according to God's will, cosmic law. And through which body, mind, organism, through which person a happening happens, which the society considers your action, my action, his action, is again according to God's will, cosmic law. The human being is incapable of doing anything. The basis of my concept of enlightenment is the total acceptance that the human being is incapable of doing anything for the very simple reason, fundamentally he is only a three-dimensional object. Therefore, it is God or the source or pure energy or consciousness as the source functioning through every human object and bringing about whatever is supposed to happen according to God's will or cosmic law. The human being is incapable of doing any deed. And then Buddha answers, what does enlightenment do? Buddha's answer, I was struck by the accuracy of that. The accuracy of it. He doesn't even say happiness. I say happiness through peace of mind. But the Buddha is much more accurate. He says enlightenment means the end of suffering. My experience tells me that. What is the end of suffering? End of hatred towards me for my action, hatred towards others for their action. That load of hatred is the suffering which ends.
With moksha, does one lose attachment?
First, let's begin with moksha. What is moksha? Freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from the sense of personal doership, which gives me a load of hatred for myself and hatred for the others. That is the suffering which ends. Therefore, again, moksha, assuming that it is some kind of happiness. For whom is that moksha? For this individual entity, for the ego. And therefore, what is the freedom from? Freedom from the suffering. Freedom from suffering, Buddha says. Freedom from suffering. And what is the freedom from suffering? No more load of guilt and shame for my action. No more load of hatred for the others. So the suffering which ends is the hatred every human being has for himself, for his actions, which have hurt others, for whom they have not forgiven him. And the bigger load, much bigger load, of hatred for others who have hurt him. That is the suffering which ends, which is negative. Positively, I say, happiness through peace of mind. Because the human mind cannot live in negative terms. Therefore, I say, Buddha is accurate. End of suffering. End of suffering means happiness through peace of mind. And then I came across, it really touched me. What I came to the conclusion, after a great deal of suffering and misery, from personal experience, happiness through peace of mind. There has been a Sanskrit word for it 5,000 years. Happiness through peace of mind. Sanskrit, Sukha Shanti. What is the human being seeking? Sukha Shanti, which is in nature. Which is its nature. The nature of the soul which has manifested itself as a source. With the unmanifest soul, there is no question of anything. Once there is manifestation, there is what the Bible says, I am. The unmanifest, after it has become the manifest, with the duality, it says, I am, in the Bible. And it says, what is this I am? I am that I am. I exist, that's all. Then the I exist becomes identified with each body, mind, organism and the name. That I am Ramesh, I am Patrick. And daily living means Patrick and Ramesh. And this stops. If I totally accept this can't do anything, this one can't do anything either, so it can only this, it can never be this. Which means happiness through peace of mind, Sukha Shanti. Basis of which is, I cannot hurt you, you cannot hurt me. Because a three-dimensional object cannot very well do anything, not even speak or listen. It looks as if Ramesh speaks, Patrick listens. Patrick speaks, Ramesh listens. But if both Patrick and Ramesh were in deep sleep, or sedated into unconsciousness, neither of us will be able to speak or listen. Therefore, who does the speaking and the listening? Consciousness or energy, pure consciousness or pure energy, impersonal energy, functions through two body-mind organisms, brings about talking to one, listening to the other, talking to one, listening to the other. Even a simple thing, speaking and listening, is not an individual doing. It's a happening to a particular body-mind organism, done by the soul or God. Therefore, whatever action anybody does, whether it's the murderer or the philanthropist, is a happening brought about by the source of God. Therefore, the most important thing is, if I am not the doer of any deed, I don't have to worry about God punishing me for anything. If I am incapable of doing anything, how can any God punish me? That means if I accept that I am not the doer, I don't have to worry about God punishing me. I don't have to worry about my conscience. But I do have to worry about what the society may do to me. Two totally different. We talk of responsibility. Responsibility. So I said, exactly. But responsibility for me, two totally distinct. No responsibility to myself, no conscience. No responsibility to God, He is the doer. But my responsibility to the society in which I live is intricate with the very living of daily life. I don't have to worry about God, but I do have to worry about the society. Therefore, in any situation, before I decide to do something, I have to find out what the result will be. I won't know the result, but at least I have to plan what is likely to be the result, what is likely to be the consequences of that result, based on which the society, which considers that as my action, will reward me or punish me. Reward means pleasure, punishment means pain. That everybody has to accept. Therefore, responsibility only to the society, about which you can do nothing. And that is what I call destiny of every human being.
So, with Ramesh,
Yeah.
did he lose his attachment to the well-being of others? For example, if one of your children
Yeah.
was harmed,
Yeah.
did you
Now, wait
lose
a minute.
the feelings that went along with
Yeah. Look,
that harmful
Ramesh
action?
cannot have an attachment to anything. The attachment or detachment is a biological reaction. I love my wife and children because every ego is supposed to like it. Every ego. And therefore, likes and dislikes, preferences are part of the biological reaction. Therefore, even Ramana Maharshi, if he was sitting for lunch or dinner, they probably didn't have too many dishes. But if they had, you can quite easily imagine Ramana Maharshi, body, mind, organism, saying, no, I don't like that, I prefer that. So if the server brought with several, he would say, yes, that, not this. So this and not that is a biological preference according to genes and conditioning.
But did you lose the conditioning
You
that
can't.
the welfare of your daughter
You
can't?
can't. That is the point.
Right.
Every ego is attached to that same body-mind organism to which he was attached before the enlightenment. Therefore, there may be slight variation, but the basic biological reaction will continue to be the same. If Ramana Maharshi liked a particular dish, he continued to do that until he was dead. And therefore the cook would probably do that more often than otherwise. Every body-mind organism, that of a sage or a psychopath, has preferences. Natural preferences, based, I should think, more on genes than conditioning. Conditioning also. If the circumstances of a particular person is, he can't have some sophisticated dishes, then the body-mind organism wouldn't know whether to like it or not like it. That depends on the conditioning. Therefore, conditioning is preferences, positive or negative, about whatever happens in the conditioning. Therefore, every body-mind organism has its own natural preferences, which we say Ramesh's preferences or Patrick's preferences. But they are preferences in the body-mind organism.
Okay, well then I've got a good one for you.
Please.
If the movie is in the can,
Yeah.
these preferences are shaping the balance of the movie that is yet to be played out in human history.
But that movie is already in the can, Patrick. But what happens in the movie, you and I as characters in the movie cannot know. You see? Therefore we know that the movie is still far ahead. Things about there's a future. Future we are going to have. But what it is, nobody knows. Therefore the basis of daily living is every human being is forced to do something or nothing in a given situation. Having done it, he can have no more control over anything that happens. The result and the consequences of that result, which the society considers your action, my action, is essentially the result and the consequence of that result of the action we have actually done. Therefore, what the society considers as your action, my action, is truly not our action. It is the result and the consequences of our action, which the society considers our action.
I have the belief that the balance of the story that is written is a beautiful story. Do you share that belief?
Yes, beautiful story, with my firm conviction that the beauty of a story would not be there in the absence of duality. What gives beauty to life? You never know this or that. Sometimes pleasure, sometimes pain. In fact, if there were no pain, I doubt if there could be any pleasure. Very often, pleasure is the absence of the pain.
Yeah.
What is dictating the balance of the story?
The written script. The script is already written. The movie based on that script is being unfolded on the screen. Go ahead, any question?
Are you writing this story?
If Ramesh has a character in this movie, he's supposed to write a story, he'll write a story, as he has been doing for 30 years. Story is my concept of whatever I talk about. But the only thing I do know whether I write a story which you like or don't like is not my story. It was being written by the soul, along with the result of that story, fame or infamy, from the society. Therefore, an unsuccessful writer didn't choose to be an unsuccessful writer. And the writer who suddenly, the very first book becomes a bestseller, he didn't choose to be a writer of that caliber. Again and again, the sage did not choose to be a sage, the psychopath didn't choose to be a psychopath. Both the sage and the psychopath, good and evil, had to happen as the basic duality of daily living. Therefore, God had to create body-mind organism with such genes and conditioning that only good deeds happen, and the society called him a sage. Evil things also had to happen. Therefore, God had to create body-mind organism with such genes and conditioning that only evil things happen. Therefore, truly, there is no sage nor a psychopath, except the body-mind organism so created by the Creator, through which he himself functions and brings about what each body-mind organism has been programmed to do as far as the society is concerned. Therefore, in daily living, I am free to do whatever I want. In my case, the genes and conditioning are such that whether the situation is very serious or not really serious, my genes and conditioning are such that I usually make a considered decision. What if I did not have the ability to make a considered decision? I don't have it. It's part of my genes and conditioning. If my genes and conditioning do not give me that ability to make a confirmed decision, what would I do? I'll toss a coin. And nobody can say whether someone who keeps on switching coins is not more successful than someone who makes considered decision. Two are separate. There's a joke about about the managing director, the top man, CEO, chief executive officer of a very large company, president and chairman. He had 6 assistants. And in one case, yes or no. 3 said yes, 3 said no. So what did the chairman do? He said, I'll go to the toilet and come in 3 minutes. Went to the toilet, tossed the coin, came and said, this is it. And whether the decision, such an important decision, turned out to be good for the company and therefore special bonus for the chairman, or it was bad, ruined the company, is the luck, is the destiny. Therefore, my wife and I saw 9/11 on the TV when it was happening. The first plane had already gone and smashed the thing. When we watched it, the second one was still to happen. And somewhere the voice said, that plane is too close. And then that bomb it. So a thing like that thousands of the buildings collapsed. Obviously, thousands of people must have been dead. What was my reaction? My reaction was the body-mind biological reaction. Horror and anger of what the eyes have just seen. But there was no question of my hating anybody. There was no question of my hating the flyers who flew those aeroplanes. That was his destiny, their destiny to do that. Therefore, horror, anger may be the biological reaction in a body-mind organism. But if there is total understanding, along with that will go the fact. There will be no hatred against the perpetrators of those actions, because the only perpetrator of any action is God, the soul.
Does Ramesh have the sense of love?
But I can answer if you tell me what love is. Love is a concept, Patrick. Love is a concept. Whether it's Valentine or ABCs or XYZ. It's a concept.
But Krishna speaks of Atma's expansion of love in the Gita.
Yes.
And I have a sense that I very clearly, whether I need to define it or not, that I know what love is without...
Do you want to know my concept of love? Non-doership. No hate. No hating myself, not hating the other. Basic duality. Love and hate. No hate, therefore there is love. Therefore, frankly, Patrick, I rarely ever use the word love. In practical daily living, I would use the word affection. But love means hate. Honeymoon, total love. 6 months after the honeymoon,
I see love as something completely separate from doership and the person, that
No.
it's universal,
Love.
that it's...
love can be said in terms of what I call happiness, based on non-doership. Therefore again, you cannot hate anybody. You cannot hate anybody. From the point of actual daily living, what can love be? Total absence of hatred. And in practical terms, I would use the word affection. Okay. Any other question?
There'll be more.
Do you know, Patrick, people who come here, I challenge them to ask me a question which I cannot answer. You know why? Because 95% or more of those questions I have asked myself sometime or the other and got an answer. Mind you, my answer may satisfy you, you may accept my concept, or you may not accept my concept. That is your destiny. Okay.
Okay. For
So
now.
again, if there are any questions which arise during the day, you are welcome to come again and we'll deal with them. Any question?
No, I have no more questions.
Any comment?
I just want to say I'm very
Please.
happy to meet you. I come from Napoli. Do you remember Vula, the Greek Neapolitan girl that came last year to meet you? Okay, well, she has died of cancer. And she told me before leaving she was so happy to have met you, and I wanted to tell you that.
That's but still, the cancer must have brought the pain that is supposed to bring. Therefore, even a person like Ramakrishna Paramhams, greatest sage, when he was suffering from cancer, his body, mind, organism could not help crying out in pain, "Mother, why are you torturing me?" Jesus Christ, "Father, why hast thou forsaken me?" Pain bringing out a reaction from the body, mind, organism. Therefore, that enlightenment means no more pain is stupid. Whether enlightenment happens or not is predetermined. And the total amount of pain and pleasure I am supposed to experience in my entire life is also predetermined. You see? Therefore, enlightenment may bring me happiness, but pleasure and pain will continue because they are already predetermined. Come on. Okay.
Should I sit there?
Yes, Danya. Oh, thank you. Yes, sir. Money.
Намасте.
Делая практику атма-вичары или практикуя йогу или еще какую-то другую практику, прихожу к точке, случается точка абсолютного покоя. Non-дуализм. Но это не длится долго, несколько секунд, минут, может быть десятков минут. Но сталкиваясь с какой-то реакцией мира, то есть выходя, мир выталкивает оттуда, из этого состояния такого покоя или блаженства. Бывает иногда состояние экстаза недолгое, но мир выдергивает. Общение, контакт с людьми. В этот момент, когда вот в этом состоянии находишься, эго есть или нету? То есть, может быть, это состояние какой-то иллюзии, обмана?
So,
Is he talking about one thing or many things?
actually,
Go ahead, Daniel.
just one long question. So, it's same question from me actually. So, by doing practice of sometimes Atma Vichara, self-inquiry, like
Wait a minute. Could you repeat that, please?
sometimes doing practice of Atma Vichara.
Doing the practice. That's the problem. Doing the practice.
Проблема в том, что ты делаешь
You may
практику.
start the practice. But if the genuine practice, then you will disappear. The practice will happen.
Пусть практика случится.
No problem about doing any practice is the doing. And curiously, that is precisely what King Janaka was told by his young guru.
Это именно то, что королю Джанаки сказал его гуру, что проблема в делании.
So what I am saying is, this King Janaka was highly regarded as a sage.
Король Джанака был почитаем как святой.
So this Ashtavakra, the young guru, he comes and tells him, your only problem is that you do meditation.
И однажды он встретил молодого гуру, который ему сказал, что твоя проблема в том, что ты занимаешься медитацией.
Doing meditation, starting meditation is no problem. Why? Because in any situation, it is the individual who decides to do something or nothing. And instead of not doing nothing, you do something, which is meditation. But if there is no doership, you only start the meditation as a biological, as a mechanism. You have to start whatever it is.
Все, что ты можешь сделать, это начать медитировать. Это случается как действие механизма, то есть начало медитации.
You see? Therefore, it's not really doing. You start this as a mechanism. But if the understanding is there, then very quickly the doer gets into the background and the doing, the meditation happens.
Если есть понимание, то делатель уходит на задний фон, и медитация случается. So, may I just
Please.
continue? So, and as a result of happening of meditation, there is a condition comes, non-duality condition. No, there is absolute peace inside this condition. Total peace.
It may or may not happen according
Oh.
to your destiny.
Of course, but quite often it does happen.
You can only let meditation happen. What result it brings to whom is his destiny. But the basic fact is, if there is a sense of personal doership, it is nothing important is likely to happen. If the sense of doership is not there, that meditation is likely to bring in a lot of good things.
Случается так, что если есть чувство делателя, скорее всего ничего особенного не произойдет. А если делатель отсутствует, то с большей вероятностью медитация даст результат.
There is a real difference between meditation happening and someone doing the meditation.
Есть огромная разница между случившейся медитацией и медитацией, которую кто-то делает.
Someone doing the meditation has an expectation.
Тот, кто делает медитацию, что-то ожидает.
Mother Teresa,
Мать Тереза.
poet laureate, so many admiration, so many awards.
Ее так почитали, ее так уважали очень сильно.
In her own words, she confessed to her confessor. She was a Catholic. She confessed to her usual confessor.
Перед смертью она исповедовала.
I am a totally frustrated woman. She died a frustrated woman.
Она сказала, я в полном отчаянии.
Why? Because she had an expectation.
Почему? Потому что она ожидала.
And what was her expectation? She expected Jesus Christ to appreciate her work. And she expected Jesus Christ to come and embrace her. He didn't do it.
Она ожидала,
Mother Teresa was frustrated
она ожидала, что Иисус спустится с небес и
because she had an
поблагодарит ее.
expectation. She had an expectation.
So, and just the last part of the question. So, this condition sometimes lasts 1 second, 1 minute, or 5 minutes. But there's after something happens, some reaction from the society. Somebody said anything to me.
Then you reacted.
And quickly I drop from this. But so the question is, if I drop from this condition and then I try to come again inside, is it real? Because I read in some books that if the enlightenment is there, it doesn't go away. But it does go away. Maybe it's not real. Is it illusion?
Look, Daniel, everything is an illusion.
Все есть иллюзия.
I'm not joking. You know, Ramana Maharshi once said, all that needs to be said, all that needs to be said has been said in one verse, number 170, in a book called, in a work called Viveka Chudamani by the first Shankaracharya, Adi Shankara.
Рамана Махарши сказал, что все, что должно было сказано в одном стихе Ади Шанкарачари.
All that needs to be said has been said in that one verse.
В одном единственном стихе было все сказано.
And what does the verse say? The verse says, the world that you see in your dream
Стих говорил, мир, который вы видите во сне,
is a projection by the mind.
это проекция ума.
The world that you see in your dream, with which you are not connected, is a projection by the mind.
Мир, который вы видите,
The world you see in your waking state, with which you feel connected,
и мир, который вы видите в реальной жизни, с которым вы чувствуете свою связь,
is also a projection by the mind.
Это тоже
There is
проекция
no
ума.
difference.
тоже проекция ума, нет никакой разницы.
We call this real.
Мы
But
называем
it
этот
is
мир
as fictitious
реальным.
as the dream in your, as the world in your dream.
Но он такой же иллюзорный, как и мир, который мы видим во сне.
And it is based on this concept, that there has been a concept for a long, long time, ever since you can remember. There really never has been a creation, nor a dissolution.
Ничто никогда не рождалось и не умирало, по сути. Не было сотворения мира, не было разрушения мира.
So, what happens when you are concept? I accept that, no question about it. But I am concerned with me as an illusory object in this illusory manifestation.
Если я принимаю эту концепцию, то все, о чем я беспокоюсь, это обо мне как об иллюзорном объекте.
I accept that. What you are saying is, you have an illusory problem. You, as the illusory human being, have an illusory problem about an illusory situation.
У тебя и у другого иллюзорного объекта есть иллюзорная проблема об иллюзорной ситуации.
Therefore, I give you an imaginary concept
Поэтому я тебе даю
to
выдуманную
deal with
концепцию,
that illusory problem.
чтобы ты решил эту иллюзорную проблему.
Simple and clear. That is what I owe you people. Simple and clear.
Ясно и четко.
Simplicity and clarity is all I can give you about my concept.
Все, что я могу вам рассказать о моей концепции, это ясность и четкость. And the last question.
Please.
Then I read some book of Ramana Maharshi. I don't remember which one, because when I was reading, I was crying. I don't remember a word, just a single sentence.
Yes.
He said, to become enlightenment, we should do Atma Vichara, self-inquiry. So was he wrong or was he right? Because when I look in his eyes, I don't think he was wrong. But when I look in your eyes, I don't think you're wrong. I think you're right as well.
So, what is the Atma Vichara? Therefore, what? Your conclusion, therefore, is a result of Atma Vichara.
Yes.
What is your conclusion?
Result of Atma Vichara should be enlightenment, isn't it?
To be confused with that question is enlightenment?
I think so. It seems so to me.
It seems so, is right. Therefore, everybody thinking and talking about enlightenment gets disillusioned. It does. Therefore, I keep. Nobody could give me an answer to what precisely is enlightenment And what can I expect enlightenment to give me? Because of enlightenment.
Никто никогда не мог
My
дать мне
basic
ответа.
question, nobody could answer,
Что
and
такое
therefore I had to go
просветление?
into practical experience. Practical experience, not about enlightenment. Why? Because I don't know what enlightenment is.
И тогда мне пришлось проверять это на практике, но не с точки зрения
The
просветления.
first
Почему?
conclusion I came to was, enlightenment is not a certified event.
Потому что я не знаю, что такое просветление. И первый вывод был, просветление это не то, что можно определить сертификатом или дипломом.
Doctor, lawyer, chartered accountant, psychopath, all certified.
Все можно определить. Доктора, врача, адвоката, психопата, все можно определить.
But who is going to certify enlightenment?
Но кто мне скажет, что я просветленный? Мир
Therefore,
подтвердит это.
enlightenment can only be a concept.
Поэтому просветление только может быть концепцией.
A concept which has given me happiness.
Концепция, которая принесла мне счастье.
Therefore I asked myself, what is the happiness I'm seeking? And I came to the conclusion, happiness is totally different from pleasure, which is opposite of pain.
Я пришел к выводу, что счастье не имеет ничего общего с удовольствием и болью.
Pleasure is what a happening in daily living gives me, or pain.
Удовольствие и боль случаются в ежедневной жизни.
And if happiness that I'm seeking is totally different from pleasure, then it means that the happiness I'm seeking has nothing to do with what happens in life. What happens in life gives me pain or pleasure.
То есть, соответственно, счастье не имеет отношения к никаким событиям в жизни.
Therefore, I came to the most important conclusion. The happiness I'm seeking has nothing to do with what happens in life, but my attitude to life.
Соответственно, счастье это заключается в моем отношении к жизни и к событиям жизни.
My attitude to life means my attitude towards the other, morning till evening. What is daily living? Interhuman relationships.
Общение между людьми, мое общение между людьми зависит от моего отношения.
So my next question to myself was, what has been my relationship with the other which has not brought me the happiness?
Следующий вопрос был, каким было мое общение с другими людьми, которое не принесло мне счастье?
My clear, honest answer was, my relationship with the other is based on fear of the other, that he may take something from me, however close he is.
Мой ответ был, мое отношение к другим людям основываясь на страхе, что другой, вне зависимости от того, кто он есть, может что-то отнять у меня.
He may stop my getting something I want.
Или может остановить меня от получения того, что я хочу.
Therefore, the clear and honest answer I had was, my relationship with the other is based on fear and rivalry.
Соответственно, мое отношение к другим было основано на страхе и зависти.
Therefore, the happiness that I want, I shall have only if my relationship with the other is totally harmonious.
Соответственно, пришел к выводу, что счастье возможно только если мои отношения с другими людьми гармоничны.
No fear, no rivalry.
Без страха и без зависти.
And I came, the only way it can happen, my concept, only way it can happen is if I'm able to accept totally. The human being is incapable of doing any deed, neither me nor the other. I can't harm the other cannot harm me.
И это
Who
счастье,
fears whom?
это счастье может случиться только если я абсолютно приму концепцию, что никто ничего не делает. Соответственно, кто должен бояться кого?
That is my concept. Therefore, now I'm happy. What do I mean by happy? There may be pleasure or pain in the moment, depending on what happens in life, over which I have no control. But I'm never uncomfortable with myself. I'm never uncomfortable with the other. When was I uncomfortable with myself? when I blamed and condemned myself for what I did. I'm uncomfortable with the other when I remember what the other did to me or is capable of doing. Therefore, the only way my relationship with the other can be harmonious, which means I'm never uncomfortable with myself, I'm never uncomfortable with the other, is if I'm able to accept totally. I can't harm anybody, nobody can harm me. Why? Because both of us are three-dimensional objects who can't do anything.
Соответственно, на чем основывалось мое несчастье? На том, что я оценивал свои действия по отношению к другим, оценивал действия других по отношению к себе и, соответственно, давал оценку, хорошую или плохую, и зависел от этих оценок. Сейчас я понимаю, что все мы трехмерные объекты, которые ничего не делают по своей воле. Соответственно, я не имею возможности кого-то обвинять или, наоборот, даже превозносить за его действия. Соответственно, не могу обвинять или превозносить даже самого себя.
That's why the book came out, which could well be the last book. And that is, pursue happiness and get enlightened.
И не так давно вышла книга, которая, может быть, это последняя книга. И она называется